This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at AWS.com/learn more.
Hey, I'm Amanda from Trifecta Fitness. We're proud to be Clarksville's new Get Fit headquarters. Trifecta Fitness is a state-of-the-art spin and strength training studio. Our spin studio is truly one of a kind in this area, complete with 20 state-of-the-art live fitness bikes and an incredible sound system. Our strength training is done in small groups of 6 or fewer, and all of our strength and spin classes are scalable for every level of experience. Come see us in the heart of Clarksville, just behind MAPCO at the corner of Old Trenton Road and Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Call us for more info at 931-542-6265 or download our Trifecta Fitness app for a full list of upcoming classes.
In October 2019, Arlington, Texas was chosen to be the home of a new national museum, unlike any other. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a unique home of military history. The 100,000 square foot museum will house exhibits, archives, and artifacts relating to the 3,500 U.S. troops who have been awarded the medal, the nation's highest honor for valor in combat. The museum will have 31,000 square feet of galleries dedicated to U.S. troops who have received the award. The museum CEO, former Navy SEAL and NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, said the museum will focus on education as much as preservation. The building will have 5 areas dedicated to Medal of Honor winners from the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. The main gallery will be located in a central plaza under a 25,000 square foot slab of steel, which will appear to be suspended in midair. It will be supported by 5 pillars. Black Rifle Coffee is a corporate sponsor of the museum, as are the Dallas Cowboys. The museum's board also includes over a dozen major corporations and 6 Medal of Honor recipients, including David Bellavia, Patrick Brady, and Britt Slabinski. Army Staff Sergeant Bellavia was awarded the medal for clearing an entire house by himself on November 10, 2004, as a squad leader in support of Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq. He killed 4 enemy fighters and wounded a 5th in close quarters battle. Army Major General Brady flew and coordinated the evacuation of 51 seriously wounded men during a firefight in Vietnam in January 1968. Slabinski, a Navy SEAL chief and team leader, led a rescue team of SEALs during Operation Anaconda in Afghanistan in March 2002. Slabinski and his team flew to a mountaintop ambush site to rescue Petty Officer First Class Neil Roberts, who had fallen from the back of a helicopter. Slabinski led the team through almost constant combat against an entrenched Taliban force. Along with the board members, former presidents Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama serve as honorary directors. The museum is expected to open to the public in late 2024.
All right. Welcome back. MisFitNation. We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their story to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with MisFitNation. If you're a musician or actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share some of your tips with the MisFitNation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you're a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and share how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you're a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and just share your story with the MisFitNation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or are embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you're a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast apps and also on our YouTube channel at @_Misfit Nation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date with our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show. All right. Welcome to our Thursday night live show, coming to you live this week from Ottawa, Illinois. Yes, that's right. The Misfits on the road again, staying on the road constantly for our day gig, but always keeping you guys in mind. On the road today, as we started our journey, we looked out the front windshield and we seen the majestic bald eagle. Flew in front of us and dove down and got its prey. Nothing like seeing the price of freedom right in front of your face as an eagle gets his snack for the day. That motivated us for the rest of our ride. Now on to our guest. He's been a professor of management for 30 plus years. He's taught courses in organizational behavior and HR and consulted with many companies. His experience makes him a good interview because he's knowledgeable about many business and psychological topics. Recently, he just did a study on veterans and resilience, which I'd love to hear his take on that, which our audience, you guys all know that all too well. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Tom Becker to the Misfit Nation. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Rich, I am honored to be here, truly.
It was awesome. It's awesome to have you here. And I don't want to dive right in, but right before we went live, me and you were talking about your dad, and that brought chill bumps throughout my body, knowing what he was able to live through and see, and I guess share with you throughout his life. And I want to thank you for sharing that with me, and I would love for you to share some of that with the Misfit Nation, along with a lot more about your life, of course, because I only gave you about a 2-sentence brief about you right there. So if you want to dive into a little bit about that and more about you, that'd be great right now for the Misfit Nation.
Be happy to. Listen, one reason I was interested in coming on your show, Rich, is my father was a veteran. He was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941 for that incredible and horrible event. He was at a sub station right across the harbor from where the Japanese were bombing the cruisers. And so there wasn't a whole lot they could do about it. He told stories about, manning a 50 caliber machine gun and shooting at the planes, but unfortunately they were too far away for anybody to do much good. But that dramatically affected him. I'm sure in some good ways and without question in some negative ways, as you might imagine. It's a tremendously traumatic event to witness such a thing. But I was telling you, I think, Rich, that he traveled around a lot, of course, being in the Navy. He had stories about, trudging across Egypt at one point. They were on shore leave there. And to this day, I have a naval ring that he had from the Navy days, and I had it sized to fit my finger, and I've worn that with pride many times. So, the relevance of veterans in our family runs pretty deep. His 2 brothers, a sister, and a cousin were also in the Navy at the same time he was, and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, I'm from Missouri, ran an article on them because they had so many people from the same family in the Navy. So, that's kind of my heritage. And something I'm proud of, the service that they've done over the years. But I've been a college professor, as you said, for a long time. I love teaching. I love doing research. And I'd really be happy to talk to you a little bit about that study of veterans' resiliency and how it affects their health, and maybe even more important, the goals that they have for their health in the future.
Oh, definitely. That like I said in the pre-show, that's something that piqued my interest when you had that in your Calendly invite. You said that on there, and I thought that was when it was just only put like a little quick blurb on that at the bottom, so that should have been the first thing you wrote. That'd been great. The rest of it's awesome. I'm currently pursuing my doctorate, so I'll be hopefully within the next 16 months, I'll be able to call myself Dr. LaMonica as well.
Wow, that's great, man.
And so I'll be able to field that dream too, and
Good for you.
kind of be a lower, I guess, a sub peer to you at some point.
No, I don't think of anybody any longer as sub peers. I think when you first get your degree, it's like, hey, I'm a mighty Ph.D., but of course, you're just like anybody else. And I think you find out something about people in terms of how they treat other individuals based on, whatever level of education they might have attained. I've always seen that as extremely shallow. So hopefully we get a little more humility as life goes on.
Definitely. And I lived in St. Louis for a year. I worked there the year after I got out of the military. I got a job there, so I worked right downtown for a year for a nonprofit organization called the Mission Continues, helping veterans as they transitioned into the civilian world.
Oh,
so
cool.
I was able to see the post dispatch there a few times.
Oh, yeah.
While I was there. So when you said that rings a bell too.
There you go.
Lots of connections.
Yeah.
So Tom, if you want to talk about the study you did with the resilience in veterans, that'd be great, and that way it'll pique some more questions.
Sure. I got involved with this because there was a guy at the University of South Florida where I worked who was a Marine veteran. And he had a student that was interested in doing a paper on resiliency, basically meaning the ability of somebody to bounce back from adversity. And that just got us all thinking about it. And that led to us designing a study to look at the resiliency of veterans, which was kind of a natural fit because Florida, as you probably know, has got a lot of veterans. And I'm in Sarasota County. Sarasota, Manatee counties have more veterans than any other counties in Florida. So it's really a great place to meet and interact with and talk with veterans. So, we had a number of interviews with vets. Based on those interviews, we designed a survey that went out, and we collected 1,868 surveys from veterans from all over the county, all branches of the military, males, females, blacks, whites, a really kind of good cross section of people. And basically, we had a theory going forward, which was mostly supported. You're probably learning this now in a doctoral program. No theory is ever 100%, right?
Yes. Nothing could be absolute.
Exactly. But, overall, it did pretty well. What really interested us was, it had already been shown, not surprisingly, more resilient people end up overcoming adversity better and faster, and therefore don't suffer the health effects from that adversity as much as somebody else. I really want to say, and this is so important, maybe to many of your listeners, Rich, that when we look at resiliency, it's not a judgment of the individual. It's not like, oh, you're better because you were able to bounce back faster. There's a huge number of reasons why somebody might bounce back faster or slower than somebody else. So I really wanted to say that up front, because I think sometimes when you talk about research like this, it's like, oh, okay, so people who are resilient are somehow better than those who are less resilient. And that's really not the case. So we were interested in why and through what process does resiliency result in better health outcomes than other folks. And we had two basic ideas. One is, if you're resilient, let's say at time one right now, if you're highly resilient, meaning that you've got probably a variety of psychological resources, like you've got good self-esteem, you're reasonably confident that you can take on many of the challenges of life, you feel like you've got some degree of control over things, not everything, of course, but that you're as much of an origin as a pawn in life. Those psychological characteristics lend people a certain amount of resiliency. So the question then was, how does that affect how they look at life with respect to these outcomes we're interested in? And basically it boiled down to two things. One is people who are more resilient, when something bad happens, they actually see it as less bad than do other people witnessing the same event. There's extreme adversity, like I think Pearl Harbor is a good example, where nobody is sitting there as a Pollyanna going, well, let's look on the bright side. There's no bright side. This is just awful. But a lot of times in life, let's say you don't get promoted at work, or you have some kind of conflict with a friend or a significant other. Let's say that, Rich, that you're really resilient and I'm not so much. You might look at something like not getting the promotion as, okay, well, this is just a sign that I need to work harder, and it's an opportunity for me to go out and figure out what skills do I need to develop so I can, next time I can move ahead. If I'm less resilient, I look at that exact same event and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just not smart enough. This is pretty consistent with my experience. Life kind of sucks in general. So it's how you appraise that adversity. And people higher in resilience look at it, and I guess kind of the corny way to say it is they're just more optimistic. They're more hopeful about things. So they call that appraised adversity in the academic world. But to me, it's just, looking at and evaluating something as more positive than somebody else might. And then the other way that resiliency affects health outcomes is it has a direct effect on life satisfaction. In general, people who are more resilient are more satisfied with their life. And it's probably for the same reason I was just describing, that, they see life as more opportunities than threats, more, again, it's not like they've got the rose-colored glasses on necessarily. They're not saying something terrible is good, but they're looking at something that could be interpreted in multiple ways. And when possible, they kind of take the more optimistic road. Am I making sense so far?
Yes, sir. You're making perfect sense right there.
All right, good. You just tell me if I'm not, because I'm not 25 anymore. So
I don't think a lot of us are.
So let's take it one step further. So a resilient person appraises adversity as positively as it meaningfully can without being ridiculous. They're more satisfied with their life in general, although certainly bad things can happen to them. And because of these things, their physical and mental health tends to be better. Okay. And this is acknowledging that there's certainly kind of a nature nurture thing going on. Somebody can suffer from mental health problems or issues for a variety of reasons. But when it comes to resiliency, it seems to be through this process of I evaluate things more positively and I'm more satisfied with life. So that's not too surprising, I guess. I doubt if many of your listeners are going, wow, that's a shock. More resilient people are, physically healthier and don't suffer as much mentally. But the more important part of what we found is that it's not just how resiliency affects the individual right now. It affects how they set goals for the future and the commitment that they have to those goals. So that makes it kind of an ongoing effect rather than, kind of a snapshot or, just a cross section of my life. So that to me is like the most hopeful thing. And I say hopeful in particular because there's a bunch of research that I did not do, but is published and available, that shows that resiliency is not just something you're born with or stuck with at a given point in time. It is something that can be developed and even trained. There's training programs that organizations do. And I know in the military, I can't cite you the article off the top of my head, but I know they've done resiliency training in the military. And the studies show that at least to a certain degree, any individual's resiliency can be increased through training and development. So that's good news for them, not only in terms of health, but in how they live their lives going forward.
Definitely. And the military does things a lot of ways to build your resiliency. One way is through classwork or through, I guess, conference style learning. And other ways is just through the sheer training you do, the amount of training you do and learning how to fall down and get back up. And knowing you're not going to always be 100% successful because, like we said earlier, not everything is absolute. It's not even in the real world, everything's not absolute. And you have to learn to, when you fall, you bruise your knee, you bruise your ego, you got to get back up, brush it off, and keep charging forward. If you keep looking backwards, you'll never be able to move forward. And it's a lot harder to take that anchor off you if it's still stuck behind you.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, Rich. I think, probably in boot camp, adversity is something that happens every day. So you get a massive dose of adversity. And one thing that I think is proven to be true also, kind of by common sense and by research, is that, going through adversity and coming out the other side builds resiliency in such a way that you become more confident. So it can ratchet it up. And it's not just like positive self-talk or, ignoring the weeds in the garden and hoping they'll go away. It's like, no, I actually did it. I know that I did that. So it's not like just, putting a positive spin on something.
Definitely. And I like you said, the weeds in the garden. Yeah. So you got to get through the weeds to get to the trees and such, or through the grass. And a lot of people get stuck in those weeds, and it's hard to get out of it. And like you said, for some people, it comes naturally for some people to be resilient. And you say naturally, but it comes through life lessons. You may feel like that. Oh, that kid there, he was so resilient growing up, but it's because something happened in his life from age 0 to whatever that made that person have that thick skin and may be able to push forward and say, it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. Today is what matters, and I need to.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And there's so much that must feed into that. I don't think anybody fully understands, kind of the origin or the essence of resiliency early on, how much of it is, related to something genetic. To me, a lot of it has got to be the experiences that people have. Even as a kid, like you're saying, Rich, having role models nearby who you look up to, who have shown, when they get knocked down and they may not like it, they may complain, they may cuss, but they get back up. So I think that's an important thing to be able to see. And not everybody has that opportunity. So that's why I say it's not somebody's fault at all if they end up, having to develop their resiliency later on or kind of hitting a wall or having difficulties. Not all of us were lucky enough to have those role models. So.
Definitely. And one of our listeners, Jake, just chimed in here. He said, what are the best practices for teaching children how to be resilient in your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. Was that Jake?
Yeah, Jake.
Jake, that really is a great question. I know I've read articles that the whole concept of resiliency came out of studies of children. That was like in the psychological literature. That's where it really began. And so one thing is the kind of intentional experience and giving the experience of adversity to kids. And you got to be very careful about that. You're not going to, tell a 3-year-old that, they got to go to the gym and bench 200 pounds or something like that. But, if they're, going through that period where they're walking and they fall down, hold on for a minute, let them try to get up themselves. If they need some help, you can lend it, but let them try before you do something for them. I think that's a great way to develop kids.
I think it's outstanding. Yeah, let them. I guess, like you're saying, do a trial and experiential learning for them as they go, and they'll learn. And They'll learn. They'll keep putting their hand on the hot pot, and they'll figure it out. So,
Yeah.
there's only so many times you can tell a kid not to do something before they realize it's not a good idea, and I guess that builds resiliency too.
Well, I don't want to get into a big stereotype here of any given generation, because I've been teaching, like you said, for 30 years, and I've seen students from multiple generations, and in every cohort of student, some of them are lazy, some of them are, immensely hard workers. Some of them are super bright, some of them not so much. You see the whole spectrum right there in front of you. But one thing you hear kind of pretty often is that recent generations are kind of spoiled and they're not willing to work, and they got the helicopter parents and all that. I can't really, from a scientific point of view or given studies, I can't really speak to that. But I can say, if it's true that you've got a generation of people who seem, the way some people would put it, they seem soft, they can't handle much adversity, that it does fall at least partially on the parents, because, part of your job, I think, as a parent is to help your kid be strong so they can go through life and deal with all the stuff that gets thrown at all of us. Right.
And my brother chimed in here. He said, so basically you stop bubble wrapping the kids and let them fall, let them do the things like, I mean, we were growing up. It was go outside and come back when the lights come on. Don't come in.
Yeah.
And that was some things that happened with us. One time he hit me in the face with a skateboard right below the eye. We laugh about it now, but I came in the house bleeding. My mother made me take my shirt off because she didn't want me to ruin my shirt or get blood in the house, and then sent me right back outside. It wasn't time yet to come in.
Yeah, so, these were different times. These were different times, right? If I would have worn a bicycle helmet to school when I was a kid, I would have gotten beaten up on the playground.
That's the first thing I thought of when you said that.
Right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to anybody, don't wear bicycle helmets. Hey, wear helmets. But I'm just that was a different time. That was a different time. I used to ride to school, to high school, like 5 miles on a bike, and there'd be these grates next to the roads. There's cars whizzing by, and there's these grates that if your tire was too thin, it could get caught in the grates, and nobody cared. It was like, just go out and do it. So anyway, different time.
He'll be all right.
He'll be all right. He'll learn.
So you also you've been teaching management on that side, on the business side, for a long time. What are some trends you see for business development now, for growth in business? For a lot of our listeners are also entrepreneurs, or I call them entrepreneurs. How do they grow their business and build that management style along the lines with resilience in the business?
Yeah, that is actually a really deep question, because there's so much that you have to deal with when you decide to start your own business. I'm right there with your audience, because I started a firm called Stratafy, a small talent management firm. I've got 6 people that I work with. They're really independent contractors, not employees. But, we're just trying to get the thing off the ground, and it's massive hours, you put in. I would say some of the key things are to make it as an entrepreneur. Everybody says, funding is critical, and it is. Most of us, if you're young, you go to family and friends and try to just scare up enough money. If you're a little older, like I am, you've got some saved and you jump into it. But I think the resiliency piece of it is so critical. In fact, I'll give you one more study that I was involved with that kind of stresses that point. I was working with a guy named John Kabungo at the University of South Florida. John grew up in the Democratic Republic of the Congo for part of his life. He then became a naturalized citizen here in the U.S. And we decided to do a study of entrepreneurial resilience in sub-Saharan Africa, specifically Ghana and South Africa. So we're like, okay, first we got to translate all the surveys. So we work with 2 professors in Africa, in Ghana and South Africa, and they had research assistants, and we collected data from. Oh God, don't hold me to the numbers on this one. I'll just say hundreds. I know for sure it was hundreds of entrepreneurs in those 2 countries. And some of these entrepreneurs were in so-called survival ventures, meaning, they literally were selling their wares on the street with just some family members helping out. So some of them had more established businesses. So we collected that data from them at time 1. And unbeknownst to us, time 1 was right before COVID. So we collected data on resiliency at time 1. COVID hits, and hey, disaster. But from the research point of view, it was like, okay, now everybody is experiencing massive adversity. Where is resilience supposed to matter the most? When there's a lot of adversity. So then we had measures of the motivation of entrepreneurs in those 2 countries, and whether or not they continued their businesses. And we found that resiliency prior to COVID predicted post-COVID success in terms of the motivation and commitment of entrepreneurs and the well-being of their families and the success of their business. So, yeah, without question, resiliency plays a huge role given the number of barriers that you got to deal with as an entrepreneur.
Definitely. And not thinking of it, I was an entrepreneur when I started this show. I was thinking of it as something to do during the COVID time. I started this show, and when you start things like this, you don't realize what you're doing, that it actually is a small business as you start growing it. Yeah. And I had to learn and grow as I went along, and being resilient really helped me to fight through everything and get to where I am now and be able to do live shows and talk with you and talk about resilience now. Yeah. So it really helps out to push through, I think, to be successful and understand that you're going to have hiccups. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have good days. You got to ride those waves and get on the other side.
Yeah, no question. And I think the good side to it, besides, you're hoping that your business will be successful, the great side to it is if you pick the right sort of business go in, meaning the one that fits you, you're doing work that you actually love or that you find interesting at least, that the long days, the long hours, they go by pretty quick. Yes. I don't know what your experiences are, but, I am definitely drinking from the fire hose right now. I feel like, okay, I had the college professor thing down pretty well, but then you say, okay, now I'm going to start. I had done consulting all along the way, Rich. I worked with Procter & Gamble. I worked actually with the U.S. Army. The FBI they called me in on a project that had to do with measuring integrity. So I had all these cool consulting gigs as I was a college professor. And a lot of times the consulting and the research kind of went hand in hand, right? But now it's like, okay, now you're 100% consulting and you got to learn a lot more than I knew about, marketing and how to get on LinkedIn and do everything that you can do on LinkedIn, even about finding how to do podcasts like this one, Rich. So yeah, without question, it's been an experience, but it helps when you love it, right?
Yeah. When you're passionate about something, I think it really helps it become easy. Like, so when you're talking about the long days that just fly by, I do my day job, I do this. I'm also doing my doctoral studies. So my days are pretty packed right now. And, I have about 6 hours of sleep that I'm allowed to have, but I only get about 4 anyway. So, and then I'm right back at it. So it's just a daily thing for me. I'm so used to just being busy from my time wearing boots and suits. Yeah. That it just doesn't. Right now, it's just this seems like fun to me. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So with a business, especially hiring and keeping good talent, how does that help or hurt the manager? How do they tackle the hiring and keeping of good talent, and vice the poor talent that's out there in the pool right now?
Yeah, I did an audio event, a LinkedIn audio event just this afternoon that was titled Employment Tests, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I had a panel of experts on there, three people, and the four of us discussed the key issues in employment testing and hiring people. And I think that's really relevant to your question because so many small businesses struggle with talent management. It's not because the people involved, that is the owners, the entrepreneurs, it's not because they're not smart enough. It's not because they're not willing to work hard enough. They just don't have the background or training and knowledge about what's the best way to hire people. So a lot of small businesses today still use unstructured job interviews where they sit down for 15 or 20 minutes and basically chat with interviewees. Many of the questions may not be job related. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I think actually all of us think we're really great judges of character. And so based on a 15-minute discussion, I can tell whether or not you're going to be a great employee. Not surprisingly, it doesn't work out too well. And the two kinds of errors that you're almost fated to make, no matter how you're hiring people, is they call them, false positives and false negatives, right? So the false positive, that's real obvious. That's the person you hire that turns out to be the big social loafer, or, just not cutting it. And there they are right in front of you. And you're going, why did I hire, so-and-so? But the other type of error is just as bad, maybe even worse in some cases. That's the person that you didn't hire that you should have hired. Now think about what happens there. That person goes to work for a competitor of yours and ends up being a superstar, right? This is like, I'm trying to remember the basketball team. I think it was Houston, who passed on Michael Jordan on the first round pick. And he ended up going, of course, to the Bulls. I'm just trying to imagine how I would feel if I said, I don't know, he's good, but, so-and-so's better. It just didn't work out for him. But yeah, I think those kinds of errors are really harmful, especially to small businesses, because, you make a couple of bad hiring decisions that can be fatal if you're running a small business. So what do? The good news is there is a ton of evidence on better ways to hire people. Can I give you 3 examples?
Definitely.
Yeah. So the bad news about the traditional interview, the way it's normally done, is it's a terrible predictor of job performance. The good news is you can structure interviews in a way that they're much, much more valid. Can't get into all the details here, but I'll give you a couple of examples. First thing that's got to happen is, you've got a decent job analysis that shows you here's the task, duties, and responsibilities for that job, and here's the skills needed to do that job. If you've got that, then you can ask job-related questions that are going to be pertinent to the performance of that position. You also need to standardize the questions that you're asking. So if I ask you questions 1, 2, and 3, and I ask the next person questions 4, 5, and 6, how do I compare the two of you?
Right.
Totally different, domains, right? So yeah, you can make them better. The second thing I would say is for almost any position, using a cognitive ability test is a good idea. They've been studied really widely. It's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, you got to hire all geniuses or, anything like that. It's just, but in general, people who are smarter, I'll just say it in everyday language, people who are smarter, who have in academic jargon, have higher cognitive ability, they just acquire job knowledge faster. So in general, it's a pretty good predictive job performance. That's not to say it's even better than motivation, but at the starting point, those folks have a leg up. The other thing I would say is it's really important to measure integrity or ethical principles. It's hard to do, but it's so important, because the worst thing that can happen is, if you think about it, you're running a small business and you got somebody who's really smart, but they're dishonest. Wow. Somebody who's not so smart and they're dishonest, hopefully you'll catch them or something, you got a Bernie Madoff working for you.
Oh, wow.
You know, super smart guy, but, rather low on the integrity factor, So, yeah, I would say, structured interviews, cognitive ability, and an integrity test will really give you a leg up over most small businesses. And it's possible to measure all three of those things in a way that provides input into making better decisions and therefore better retention as well as job performance.
Definitely. And you talk about inclusivity, integrity, and then you keeping a diverse workplace and having an integrity within the interview process.
Yeah.
Recently, I guess within the last 5 or 6 years, you had the diversity, inclusivity, and equal employment, DEI, DIE, within the workplace. Do you think that kind of separate or segregates the workplace, or can you do that and keep unity within your workplace as well?
This is like one of the most difficult questions our society is facing right now. That's why you asked, right? That's why you asked. Yeah, but I do have an opinion on that. I think there's nothing wrong with the intention of having a diverse workforce, so long as you're defining diversity broadly. I mean, if you're just trying to fill quotas, I don't think that serves anybody's interests in the long run. I really don't. Especially, I would say, the person who was hired under the quota system. If you tell me I was hired just because I was Hispanic, or just because I was a female, or just because whatever it is, right? That's not going to be great for anyone, including me. I like the idea, and this is an idea that a friend of mine, Ed Locke, who's a professor emeritus at University of Maryland, put forward. He said, the idea of diversity, the intention is fine, but really where you want to head is individuality awareness, right? Because the smallest group is a group of one, an individual. And nobody, well, I can't speak for everybody. Very few of us, I believe, want to be just known as a member of some group. Part of our identity very well might be I'm a member of these social groups. In my case, I'm white, I'm male. Somebody else, I'm black, I'm female. We may attach importance to those so-called surface features of us. But if that's all somebody knows about you, they don't know you. To know somebody is to know them individually. So individuality awareness would mean we respect the differences among individuals at the individual level. We're not just, pigeonholing people into groups. And I know it's a huge controversy. I know there's people who I'm sure would hate me for saying that. But I think eventually that's where we need to get, is where, as Martin Luther King said, we're in a colorblind society. And we look at the characteristics of the individuals. We're not there yet, and I'm sure Martin Luther King, were he alive, would say it's still a dream. But nevertheless, I think keeping your eye on the ball and looking at what the ultimate goal is important.
Definitely, and I think we keep labeling everything. We're labeling each individual into different categories. That creates that divide amongst people, because you're this, you're X, you're Y, you're Z, and that's why I have you here. And I think that causes that strife within the workplace and amongst those three people as well. So if you just say, hey, you're here to do this job, you're doing it well, let's work together to be successful as a team, and we'll do this as a team and work to the finish line. That I think would be better.
Yeah, I agree. But the biggest difficulty I think we kind of face is that there seems to be an almost evolutionary tendency for us and them. In an evolutionary sense, we traveled in small groups. You go back to prehistoric times, and we did that for safety reasons. We still do it in platoons, and things like that. So we do that for strategic reasons. But that automatically creates a boundary, right? It's us and them. And people will do it even along the most ridiculous lines. They've done research on this in social identity theory and research. People will group themselves on the basis of, if you lead them to do this, they'll group themselves on the basis of the letter that their first name starts with. You know, I mean, it's totally random. But we feel like we got to have an us. We got to have an us, and we got to have a them. You know, and I think ultimately that's what we're battling. Is we just have this incredible tendency to group up in that way.
I believe so too, and it kind of, we used to call, I guess in high school, called cliques or whatever, and it was in way back, you have the poshes, the socias, whatever, and it just has evolved throughout time, and those cliques have just become different types of cliques. And if you watch any movie on high schools, you'll see the same thing, and it just gets the same thing over and over again, just with different names.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's the same thing in a workplace. You go to those people who make you feel more comfortable, or you're more comfortable with them. And it's hard for some people to be comfortable with everyone because that's not they have some kind of anxiety or something within them that creates that, I guess, barrier for them to become close to others. And that, I think, also hurts with the closeness of a work unit.
Yes. So
that's another obstacle for the small business owner.
It definitely is. There was a guy, God, I'm blocking on his name, at the University of Delaware who devoted much of his career to studying this issue of kind of groupism. And one thing that he came to believe after years of research was that the only way to overcome that us versus them mentality is to have someone with leadership skills that could convince people that, yeah, you might think of us as two different groups, but we're all same of the larger entity, you know? So, yeah, we're two different groups, but we're the same because we're part of the larger group, right? And I think that's where leadership becomes so essential. Being able to, even though people are different and pigeonhole other people as being different, a great leader is able to promote the unity without trying to pretend like these differences don't exist, or trying to get people to overcome the idea that we are in certain groups.
Definitely. And I think that'd be a win for any leader in any level of business to be able to break that barrier down.
Yeah, no doubt.
And staying on the topic of leadership or management, right, they say that the best time to find a job is when you have a job. So how do you get this great employee in there, and every employee is always looking for a way up, unless they're just so comfortable where they are, a way up or a way out. Yeah. How do you got to allow that. If you handcuff and say, no, don't look for other jobs, that's just saying, hey, I don't want to work here because you're kind of like this dictator telling me what I have to do.
Yeah.
How do you allow that, but also foster that ability, but also fosters, hey, I encourage you to do that, but we'll take care of you here.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so Gallup, the Gallup organization has polled people for years on why they leave their workplaces. The number one reason, time and time again, is basically, I hate my boss. It's just, even if you're saying, yeah, the company's good, my pay's good, I get along with my boss is just an idiot, or my boss is just a jerk, or, whatever it is. That's the number one thing. So what does that suggest? It suggests being real careful about who you put in leadership positions or who you hire as managers, and making sure that you train and develop those people so they know how, they know that they have the interpersonal skills to pull people together. And that's not going to keep everybody. Of course, no matter what you do, some people are going to leave. But you can keep more of the good people on if you have good leadership within the organization. The other thing that's really critical is fairness. And they, in my field, they have broken this down into several different kinds. But when you design a compensation package, there's a lot of things you have to think about. Is it fair with respect to, is my pay fair compared to people doing different jobs in the same organization, right? So there's a whole technique to establishing that called job evaluation, paying different jobs based on their relative importance to the company. Then the other thing is just, doing a good job establishing the market rate of pay. A lot of times you lose employees if it's because of pay. You lose them because they can go down the street, or in this case, around the world, anywhere nowadays, and do the same thing for considerably more money. So you can't, if you're a business, you can't necessarily always pay more than all the other businesses. But you can, what you want to do is be able to hire and retain the best people you can, given the amount that you have to spend on hiring, right? So, money's a factor, but that's really important. Treating people fairly is going to hold on to them. So if you've got great bosses, great managers, great leaders, and you're paying fairly, that's at least half the battle.
Outstanding. And Tom, we've talked a lot of subjects. We have not really talked a lot about your business now, president of Stratafy. Tell us a little bit about Stratafy before we start closing the door here.
Yeah, you bet. I started Stratafy because as I was finishing my academic career, I felt like, I need an audacious goal in front of me. I live in a golf community, but I don't golf. So that's weird. But I just can't see myself, okay, I'm retiring and now I'm going to golf. So I got to have a big goal in front of me. And so since I've done consulting for many years and I've worked on a lot of projects, it just seemed to me that starting a company whose purpose is to help small businesses grow is what I like to do. So I jumped into that full speed. I created Stratafy as an LLC in Ohio, but can do work anywhere in the U.S. And I've got 6 great independent contractors or associates that work with me. We've got affiliates. Mostly what we do is what today's called talent management. It deals explicitly with hiring, training, performance and management, and compensation. That's the core of what we do. But we also help companies with respect to things like leadership and teamwork and decision making. So if we can't do it, that is, if we don't have the bandwidth to deal with whatever it is that's holding a company back from growing, we know who can. So yeah, that's I would welcome any of your listeners or anybody else who's really serious, wants to grow over the rest of 2023 and beyond. Consider Stratafy or somebody else. It's there's other people that can do this, but consider getting some help because there's a lot to know and nobody can do it by themselves.
That's a great way. That's a great thing to say there. You can't. We're all great individuals, but you need a team. You always need a team or a village to help you become successful. And I think that's a perfect thing to say right there. So if all the things we talked about, the top 3 things that you can tips that you can give the audience to grow their business and maintain an awesome workforce.
Yeah, top 3 things. Number 1, hire the best people you can afford. Just find the best people that you can possibly find. One thing that distinguishes great entrepreneurs from mediocre ones, the great entrepreneurs are not threatened by somebody who's smarter than they are. They want to be surrounded by the best people they can find. That's tip 1. Tip 2, don't skimp on training and development. On-the-job training a lot of times is pretty sloppy. Having a more systematic way of saying who needs training, how do we conduct training, and then making sure you evaluate the results, that's key. So hiring, training, and the other part of it is compensation. Reward people fairly. You don't always, maybe you can't always pay more than everybody else, but pay as much as you can reasonably afford, and you'll have a leg up on your competition in holding on to the great talent in the applicant pool.
Outstanding. Thanks, Tom. And how does someone get in contact with you if they want to just chat with you like we are now, or maybe jump in with Stratafy?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for asking, Rich. Appreciate it. Yeah, we've got a website. It's a great website, actually. My son's in digital marketing, and so I threw a little business his way. They put together a really good website. It's www.stratafy.us. And my phone number is 380-239-6688. If you go on the Stratafy website, there's a little button right at the very top. Get in touch with us. Pulls up Calendly. You'll be on my calendar. There's a 30-minute session, no charge. We just talk about what's going on with your business. We start digging into what Stratafy could do to help. If we can, great. If not, no hard feelings, no pressure, no hard sell. Maybe we can suggest somebody else that can deal with the kinds of issues that you're dealing with. So, and I invite you to contact us if you think it'd be worthwhile.
Outstanding. Tom, thanks again for taking some of your time to hang out with us, share the story of your dad and your study on resiliency with veterans. It was a great chat with you tonight, and I look forward to great things from you in the future.
Thanks so much, Rich. Really enjoyed it.
Outstanding. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. It's themisfitnation.com to catch up on all of our episodes and also to get some of that great Misfit Nation gear. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling because we are